I was 7 years old the night I asked a question that broke my family. The air smelled like rain, the kind that soaks through curtains and makes the house feel smaller. My mother had just tucked me into bed when I looked up at her and whispered, "Mom, why does Dad call Aunt Sarah baby when you're not home?" Her face went completely still. No breath, no blink. Just silence. Thick, heavy, terrifying. I thought I'd said something wrong. She smiled stiffly and said, "Go to sleep, sweetheart," but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. That was the night innocence turned into confusion, because from that moment my house stopped feeling like home. The next morning, my father's voice thundered. My mother's eyes were red, and I realized I had uncovered something no child was supposed to see. I didn't understand it then. But that single question became a scar that shaped the rest of my life. For years I was the quiet one, the peacekeeper, the girl who learned to tiptoe around adult storms. My mother, once warm and soft-voiced, turned cold. My father became distant. He'd smile at me, but it never reached his eyes. And Aunt Sarah wasn't around much anymore, but sometimes I'd catch flashes of guilt in her eyes when she saw me. I grew up surrounded by whispers and tension, and though no one said it out loud, I knew my question had broken something sacred. To make up for it, I tried to be perfect. Straight A's, school awards. I learned to cook, clean, sew. I did everything to make Mom smile again. It took years before I realized that her silence wasn't just pain, it was betrayal fermenting quietly in her veins. And I was the reminder that exposed it. I was the voice she wished had stayed silent. By the time I turned 17, my father had a new pattern. He worked late, missed birthdays, gave expensive gifts whenever guilt crept up too visible to hide. My mother stopped asking questions. Pretending was safer than fighting. But not for me. I watched everything. The money slipping, the fake laughter, the tension that cracked through small moments. I started working part-time after school, saving secretly. It wasn't about independence, it was about escape. Because deep down, I knew someday I'd need it. The turning point came the year my mother fell sick. Stage 2 breast cancer. I spent every day beside her at the hospital, while my father made brief appearances between business meetings. I was the one scheduling tests, bringing food, paying for medication out of my savings, Rs 15,000 gone in weeks. I did it without resentment, but inside, I kept remembering that 7-year-old me, the one who asked a question that revealed a truth everyone else wanted to hide. One night, while cleaning my father's office after Mom's chemo session, I found it. A message thread on his laptop. Not from Aunt Sarah this time, but a different woman. Younger, the same patterns, the same words, the same lies. My heart pounded. I wanted to scream, throw something, confront him. But then I heard my mother's weak voice calling for water in the other room, and I froze. Confrontation wouldn't fix this. It never had. I closed the laptop, and for the first time, I felt something sharper than pain clarity. My father wasn't the powerful one anymore. He was predictable. And predictability is weakness disguised as control. That was when I decided to change my story. Quietly. Calculated. I began gathering copies of every document, every message, every bank statement. He thought I was still the obedient daughter who never questioned adults. He never noticed me downloading data, quietly photographing his files, listening from behind a half-closed door. I didn't rush. I learned patience from watching my mother suffer. When her health improved slightly, I asked her one thing. If you knew someone hurt you and never stopped, what would you do? She just said, pray. But I didn't want prayers. I wanted peace. The moment came a year later, at my father's 50th birthday celebration, a grand party, full of guests, colleagues, relatives. The perfect stage for truth. The man who ignored us was now standing before hundreds, smiling like a saint, thanking everyone for their support. I waited until he lifted his glass for a toast, then stepped forward calmly. My palms were sweaty, but my voice didn't tremble. I said, "There's something you forgot to thank, Dad. The women who carried your lies." The room went dead silent. Mom's face turned white. He froze, glass mirror. I connected my phone to the speakers and pressed play. His own voice filled the room, sweet promises, flirtations, recorded messages from the very device he thought I never touched. People gasped, whispered, some recorded. He tried to cut it off, but it was too late. In 1 minute, everything he'd hidden unraveled. I didn't look at him. I looked at Mom. Her eyes were wide with shock, tears streaming. But there was strength in her face, a strength she hadn't shown in years. He shouted. He called it manipulation, said I was crazy, said technology can lie. But I stayed calm. Truth doesn't have to shout. I showed the receipts, transfers, hotel charges, booking confirmations, everything. I didn't scream. I simply said, "This is what honesty looks like when silence finally ends." He walked out of his own party, but the room stayed with me. My mother sat down slowly, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for 10 years. Aunt Sarah wasn't there, but people who once idolized him suddenly avoided his eyes. That was the day I learned something powerful. Exposure isn't chaos, it's clarity. After that night, everything changed. My mother divorced him quietly. The house that once smelled like tension now smelled like peace and disinfectant from her chemotherapy recovery. The community whispered, of course. They always do. But this time, I didn't care. He lost his company within months. His business partners pulled out once they saw the kind of man he really was. His friends stopped calling. He left the city. And I stayed behind, helping my mother rebuild piece by piece. We rented a small apartment, started a home bakery business together. She smiled again. I hadn't seen that smile since I was 7. Not since I asked that question that nobody wanted to answer. Years later, when I was 25, I saw him again. He'd aged faster than time itself, gray hair, tired eyes, standing at a pharmacy counter, pretending not to see me. I walked past, quietly, without resentment. He looked at me and said softly, "You were always too curious for your own good." I smiled and said, "No, Dad, I was just brave enough to see what others pretended wasn't there." I walked away lighter than ever before. Because sometimes the truth doesn't destroy families, it reveals who is destroying them all along. That night, I went home and found Mom sitting by the window, reading her old prayer book. I kissed her forehead, and she whispered, "That question you asked changed everything." I laughed softly and said, "It wasn't the question, Mom. It was the lies that couldn't survive it." We sat in silence, listening to the rain, the same kind that fell the night it all began. But this time, instead of fear, I felt peace. Looking back now, I realize truths are like storms. You can't stop them. You can only choose how you'll stand when they come. That question I asked at 7 taught me 3 things. First, never apologize for asking what's true. Second, silence in the face of dishonesty is slow death. And third, the truth always waits for the right moment to roar back to life, even if it takes years. So to every person listening, if something feels wrong, if your gut whispers questions nobody wants you to ask anyway. Truth doesn't crumble under pressure. Lies do. And when they finally fall apart, you'll stand taller than you ever knew you could. If you felt my story, if you've ever carried questions that burned your heart, please like and subscribe. Because one honest question, asked at the right time, can change an entire lifetime. And remember, some storms come to destroy, others come to clear the sky.